Hey everybody, Zach again, newtutorial.com, coming in, making a video for you today, and we're going to talk about something I've been researching now for the last couple of years. Have mentioned it here and there in bits on past videos. I did a video not too long ago on this book right here, The Gold of Exodus, and excellent book, true story, written in the form of a novel, and I totally recommend it. A friend of mine, David Coatney, first turned me on to this book, and I went out and bought my own copy. And so definitely a good book to check out. And it talks about the location of the real Mount Sinai. And this is something that has been a source of arguments for a long time, mostly because many denominations in Christianity and believers around the world are steeped into their tradition. They have their ways. They have their ways of thinking that have been basically what they feel is solidified by the early church fathers or other people in the past, and so it can't be questioned. And this and so many other things now are pulling this into question. And so I just think it's fantastic to me. And I've always been a fan, I guess, the whole Indiana Jones thing, what is the real story of biblical archaeology? And not that I'm a big fan of the whole Indiana Jones series or anything, but it's like just the idea of learning the history, the true history of the Bible, and because I'm a fan of the Bible, really is what it comes down to. And anything related to the Bible, I'm a fan of, and I want to learn more about it because I'm on fire and I'm passionate about stuff like this. And so understanding where the real Mount Sinai is and understanding that there are a number of different arguments of supposedly different Mount Sinai's, which is the right one, which is correct, which is the Mount Sinai of the Bible. So Catholics have their traditions, different denominations have their own, and so it all stems, you can do your own research on where all that stems from. I'm not going to get into that in this video. What I am going to get into is this whole idea of NEOM, the city of NEOM that's being planned by the government of Saudi Arabia, and what that looks like. So understand this, before we get into that, Saudi Arabia is in deep trouble. They're in deep trouble. And see, these are the House of Saud, which has become known as Saudi Arabia. They are basically hated amongst most of the Middle East, okay, because of their pompous way of living. They are in possession of Mecca, and most of the other Islamic parts of the world hate them. And they're very grateful that they have the United States as an ally, because basically we're the ones protecting them from everyone else who wants to kill them. And so if you do the research on that, the House of Saud, they're in big trouble financially. The sweet crude, their scientists have determined that their sweet crude is running out. They are going to be in trouble within a few decades here. And so the forward thinkers that they have there in that country are saying, you know what, we need to do something else. We need to come up with a different industry, because they love the money that they basically swim in, and have been swimming in for the last number of decades because of all of the oil that they ship out of that country. And so they're swimming in money. But they realize, their scientists are telling them, hey, listen, the sweet light crude, that is so, because you have sweet light crude, which is like the best, okay, in the world oil market. And then you have like shale oil, which is like bottom of the barrel, okay. So their sweet light crude is running out, and they don't know what to do about this. And their forward thinkers are like, we have to come up with a new industry. And the industry that they have chosen at this point is to become a world tourism spot. They believe that they can bring tourism of the rich and famous to their country, and that will continue the amount of dollars that flow into their nation's coffers. They look at places like Disney World and Florida, because Florida is much more than Disney. You have MGM Studios, you have all kinds of things that people go to Florida for, the beaches. And so, their people have looked at places like that, California and Florida, and the tourism that flows into there, and other places too around the world. And they said, we can do this. We can do this. And they're doing this, they're spending, spare no expense, right? Spare no expense, like the whole Jurassic Park thing. Spare no expense. They are just going all out. And so I'm going to show you some articles. I mean, they have plans for like flying drone taxis, fake moons, a fake moon, artificial rain, robot servants, all kinds of stuff, fake beaches, and just amazing things that are going to cost oodles of cash because they have the cash now to do this. If they wait, they're not gonna. And so they're doing it now when they have the money to try to open up tourism. And one of the things they have an idea of is to create this city called NEOM. And they say it's going to be 33 times larger than New York City. Now, keep in mind the whole number 33, okay, just for starters. 33 times larger than New York City. And it's smack dab right next door, or on top of, in some cases, to what I believe is the real Mount Sinai, called Jabal al-Lawz. Jabal al-Lawz. Let's go ahead and take a look at the map. So here's the map. You have Israel, you have Jordan, Egypt, and if you scroll down into Saudi Arabia here, you come to a place in the map where you have Jabal al-Lawz. Jabal al-Lawz is what I believe the real Mount Sinai, and this is where they are going to build, supposedly in this giant area here, the largest city in the world, the most technologically advanced city in the world, and they have a number of obstacles they're going to have to overcome to do this, and I believe more and more obstacles are appearing despite their attempts at trying to save their nation's future financial crisis, save them from a future financial crisis. And so Jabal al-Lawz is interesting. You click on it, and it takes you. It's got 200 reviews, 4.5 stars. And the reason is because of the internet today, we know people are sharing the information. The amount of evidence that this is the true Mount Sinai is absolutely overwhelming. There is tons of Hebrew inscriptions all over this area. Phoenician, the ancient Hebrew inscriptions all over this area. Amazing amount of evidence. You just do a little bit of research. You look at even reading the comments where God gave Moses the 10 Commandments, story of Israel. The place is very beautiful. One of my favorite places in Saudi Arabia. It's a beautiful place to visit. This is near Mount Sinai. We cannot travel till road ends. There is no entry point also. This was 6 months ago. So this guy couldn't get there. But recently, just in the last year, here recently, they have opened up to tourism, to public tourism, because they need to open this up. The prince and the crown prince realizes that they have to open this place up. And so it's near a place called Tabuk, right there. And you can travel usually from Tabuk into Jabal al-Lawz. And normally you can only go so far, but I have talked recently with people who have been there. In fact, there was a woman named Pamela Lorian who she was at our Shavuot gathering that I was at this last couple weeks, and she just came back from there. Actually even brought home some of the rocks from Jabal al-Lawz. She packed a few of these little stones, and she wanted to bring a piece of the mountain back. And so she had talked about some of her experiences, just fantastic. Anyway, the internet now is littered with people who have been there. They have seen the evidence. Many Hebrew scholars have gone there recently and have confirmed they really believe this is the true Mount Sinai. And there are still some of those out there who believe that this is not, but they're mostly basing their beliefs on interpretations and traditions. Let's go ahead and take a satellite view here. This is right there, the Mount Sinai, the Jabal al-Lawz. And everyone who visits there has amazing stories, just fantastic stories. The top of the mountain is burnt. It's got this dark hue to it, whereas the rest of the mountain does not. This is mostly shadows you see here. But it just fantastic stories. I urge you to go do your own research on this. Anyway, the point of this video is that fantastic things are happening. And again, this is the first article I saw in the Wall Street Journal. There's been many articles, but I've saved some of them. A prince's $500 billion desert dream, flying cars, robot dinosaurs, and a giant artificial moon. Saudi Arabia's crown prince turned to the U.S. consultant for help imagining a massive new city-state in a barren section of his kingdom. What emerged was a Jetsons-style world of automation. And you can't read the article because the Wall Street Journal wants you to subscribe. If you've never been to the Wall Street Journal, they'll probably let you in for free to read the first article for free. So if you want to find this article, you probably can find it. Otherwise, they may want you to get a subscription before you read the whole thing. But this next article here, too, and talks about one of the problems. And it doesn't mention NEOM, the city in particular. However, it does talk about the Gulf, which you see over here on the map. Right here, the Gulf of Aqaba. And those of you who know the tradition believe that this beach right here is where the crossing took place. And there is a natural crossing. So you can see the road coming in, the path the Hebrews would have taken. And it's a very narrow path. There's only one entrance here. And so this is where the pillar of fire would have stopped Pharaoh's chariots, where they could not get around it. I always thought about that movie when I read it, saw it, The Ten Commandments, Charlton Heston. Why couldn't he just go around the pillar of fire? I don't understand. Well, if it's a giant pillar of fire and you're coming in here and there's mountains on both sides, that's a good place to stop. And meanwhile, all the Hebrews are on the beach, and there's a natural underwater passage right here that's pretty flat, and this, crosses right over in there. And this is where Ron Wyatt found a number of these chariot parts in right here. So this is right here where, if you're familiar with that story, where Ron Wyatt found that. And then they crossed over, and then they began their work or their rest of their journey into Jabal al-Lawz, which is right here. So they would have crossed here and then finished their journey to Jabal al-Lawz right here, the Mount Sinai. And all the people, like the locals here, they all know this is the mountain of God. You talk to them, they all know this is the mountain of the Hebrew God, even the God of Muhammad, because he's also considered the God of Abraham, the God of Ishmael. And so they all know that this is the mountain of God. Anyway, just fantastic topic of study. Back to my point. The issue is they're running out of water, because now most of these countries along here are using desalinators. Israel uses them. All the Middle Eastern countries use desalinators. But what happens is when they take the salt water out of here and they process it at a plant, they have to then return the leftover sludge, the saline sludge, which is a much higher concentration of salt water, back into the source, and which raises the source's salinity to a point where the desalinators don't work anymore. And if you don't know what a desalinator is a machine that takes salt water, produces fresh water, and then puts the salt back. Okay, it weeds out the salt from the water, so you have clean drinking water you can drink. And they're very expensive machines. It's very technologically intensive, very energy intensive to do. And so they're realizing that these desalinators that are around the world, that the world is using, they're not as efficient as they used to be, because every time you use them, you put the sludge, the saline, back into the source, which raises the saline content of the source to begin with. And so your machines eventually lose, or your factories for this lose efficiency. Slaking the world's thirst with seawater dumps toxic brine into oceans. The salt and chemicals in the brine left over from desalination can threaten local marine ecosystems. So basically what's happening, they're raising the saltwater content so high in some of these places like the Gulf of Aqaba that it's killing marine life, whatever marine life was there, and it's harming, and not only that, but it's reducing the effectiveness and efficiency of the machines. And so you have to constantly create more efficient machines to do this, which then also, again, continues to raise the salinity of the water. I hope all that makes sense. My point being is, and what I told Pamela when she got back, I said, I don't see how they're going to be able to do this, because I don't see how they're going to be able to get enough water. Their machines are already pushed to the edge. I've been researching this. I've been seeing how they're doing this. And her answer was, they're doing it. They're going to keep doing it. They're going to do it. And I found this article here. Says UK firm to build carbon neutral NEOM desalination plant. Now, these are desalination plants specifically for NEOM, for the city that they're going to build in Saudi Arabia, right on top of Mount Sinai, or around that area of Mount Sinai. That's where the plan is. And so they're coming up with new, highly efficient desalination plants. Again, I think that, okay, they've solved that problem. They have some new highly efficient desalination plants, state-of-the-art, technologically advanced, carbon neutral, supposedly. Great. I still don't see eventually how they're going to get past the whole. Eventually, these will be inefficient as well because the salination will be so high after they dump the sludge continue to dump the sludge into Gulf of Aqaba that it won't be able to work anymore. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But my point to Pamela is that I don't think the Father, because I really truly believe this is Saudi Arabia. I believe that this is the real Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia. I really believe. I believe the evidence is overwhelming. The split rock is there. You've probably seen pictures of that online. So if that's the case, I don't believe the Father will allow his holy mountain to be turned into a tourist trap. I don't believe it. I believe that he will not allow that to happen. However, and this was brought up briefly in our conversation. It was me, Steve Mutria, and her, and a friend of hers too, a friend of the channel who's been watching us for a couple of years. We were all sitting there talking, and I think, while I don't believe the Father's going to allow this to be turned into a tourist trap, could it possibly be that maybe the Father is building this for a future time, for when the Hebrews return to Mount Sinai? Now, this is something I've talked about before. I don't know, because I believe in a greater Exodus. I believe it's going to be a physical event. I mean, there's verses over and over that talk about this. Isaiah 11, Jeremiah 16, Jeremiah 23, Deuteronomy 30. They all talk about a physical regathering. Just like the dispersion was a physical event, there will be a physical regathering. And that scares a lot of people. It's kind of a hard sell because that means you're going to have to actually walk. And I talked about that in a earlier video. Yeah, just like they did. We can do that, If that's the case, I don't think he's going to allow his mountain to be turned into a tourist trap, but maybe he puts in place the infrastructure to house all of these people, because Jeremiah 16, Jeremiah 23 make it pretty clear that this is going to be so much bigger than the original that people won't even reflect back to the original. This is going to be so much more magnificent. That's why they call it the Greater Exodus. The phrase Greater Exodus never appears in your Bible, but it's called that because of the verses in Deuteronomy 16 and Jeremiah 16 and Jeremiah 23, because it's going to be so much bigger than the first. In Isaiah 11, he says, I will attempt to regather them. I will regather them again a second time. Well, what was the first time? It was Egypt. The first Exodus was from Egypt. The second time it's going to be from the north, south, east, and west, the four corners of the earth, everyone, even the islands of the sea, it says in Isaiah 11. So, is the Father using Saudi Arabia's wealth? Now, remember, the first time they left Egypt, they plundered it. Is the Father using the wealth of Saudi Arabia, probably one of the most wealthy countries in all of the world, and using it to prepare a place for his people when he brings them back to the mountain? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Maybe. I don't think the Father's going to allow this city to be built. I mean, not to mention it with the whole Masonic symbolism of 33 times larger than New York City. Why 33? Why not 32 and a half? Why not 31? Why not 30? A good 30 is a good even number. Why can't we just have 30 times larger? But no, it had to be 33. It's like there's people out there, 30 sounds too round. Why don't we send the conspiracy theorist into a hissy fit by calling it 33 times larger? It's like people out there just want to toy with the conspiracy theorist. Anyway, I'm glad you tuned in on this channel. Yeah, that's why you're here, right? You're here for the lulz. So, yeah. So they've run into another roadblock. My thing was the water, because what was the biggest thing on the Exodus? What was the biggest roadblock on the first Exodus? Water. And supposedly, according to Pamela, they have discovered some underground springs, probably the springs that came out of the split rock, because the split rock is clearly visible. Here's some pictures of the split rock that so many people now have gone there and taken pictures of and brought back. Very clearly the split rock. So many of the rocks underneath this area are worn down like water would have worn them down, like a creek bed, things like that. But you have the split rock. So maybe these underground springs where the Father originally got this water from the split rock to help, water the Hebrews or animals and themselves, they're going to tap into that and get past the whole desalination thing, because that is a major problem, the desalination thing. But there's another problem. Let's take a look at this article. It came out when did this come out? This came out May 16th. So really just under about 15 days ago, almost maybe less than a month ago. Less than a month ago, it says Saudi Arabia's big dreams and easy living hit a wall. The coronavirus pandemic and falling oil prices have yanked the rug out from Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's development plans and curbed government largesse. Beirut, Lebanon. Saudi Arabia knows about head-spinning change. One day there was nothing. The next day there was everything, a business student, Nora Khalid, 23, said in Riyadh in December, describing how it felt to watch her once staid country welcome international rap stars and wrestling champions, cars steered by women, and movie theaters, gender-mixed cafes, and other previously unimaginable innovations in just the last few years. There's no break. It's happening so quickly. Now the kingdom faces yet more whiplash. Not only is the coronavirus redefining daily life for the Saudis, but plummeting oil prices are robbing the kingdom of the enormous wealth that was underwriting the new Saudi Arabia. The twin blows threaten to sink Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's sweeping social and economic agenda, and have already because see, folks, if you're going to make this into a giant Disneyland, you've got to have all of these restrictions that these Islamic restrictions lifted. What's the law? I forgot. Sharia law restrictions lifted, because you're not going to attract the rich and famous, people who normally go to, Lake Tahoe or Aspen in Colorado, some of these other high-end posh places, to come to your country. No. No, they're not going to come in and put a burqa on. No, they want to, sit by the ocean in their bikinis and sip margaritas and, go to dance clubs and all the things that, the people do at these other places, they want to do here. So he's basically allowing women to drive, doing all these other things that the Islamic law has normally prevented people from doing. Prince Mohammed, Saudi Arabia's de facto ruler, has upended his country out of recognition that the kingdom could not keep living off oil forever. They realize that the sweet crude is running out. Alongside the social reforms have come swaggering moves to diversify the Saudi economy by building up tourism, entertainment, and even futuristic new city called NEOM under a grand scheme he called Vision 2030. But with tourism canceled, concerts out of the question, and oil prices crashing, a country that was jangling with nervous excitement a few months ago is confronting a very different future from the one Prince Mohammed had promised. I think Vision 2030 is more or less over, said Michael Stevens, a Middle East analyst at the Royal United Services Institute in London. I think it's finished. Now, that's one guy's opinion. Might not be, but at the same time, let them continue to build. Let them continue to build infrastructure. If that's the Father's plan, to use this development to prepare it for God's people who might be coming on a greater exodus. Ooh, boy, that's something. That's more of a problem. See, again, I'm the kind of guy who likes to play chess. And to play chess and to play it well, you have to anticipate your opponent's moves. You have to strategize. And so I'm always studying the chessboard of life. I love doing that. And just trying to better myself at the game. All right. And so I'm looking at this and I'm like, yeah, I don't see the Father allowing his mountain to become a tourist attraction. However, what if the Father could be using this to prepare a place for his people? Because, there's got to be something there. If it's going to be even bigger than the first Exodus, and we're going back to Mount Sinai, we're going to need some stuff. Maybe the Father's preparing this place. He's building houses and, all kinds of housing and having the ability to have water on site already prepared for us. Maybe, just maybe. I just find it absolutely fascinating. That's what I see on the chessboard right now. Perhaps, maybe there's a move here. I can move my queen into position. The rook will come over from this side. Whatever. I don't know. I'm spitballing is what I'm doing. Okay, so let's keep going with the article. Fascinating article. Saudi Arabia, he said, was facing the hardest time it's ever been through, certainly the most difficult period of Mohammed bin Salman's tenure. The crown prince has given no indication of scratching any specific plans. Exactly. And his finance minister, Mohammed al-Jadaan, told Bloomberg News that projects such as NEOM would simply be delayed. Still, Saudi's long accustomed to generous fuel and electricity subsidies, cushy government jobs, and free education and healthcare may live far more comfortably than previous generations did, rewriting the relationship between the Saudis and their rulers. The government announced Monday that it would triple the country's value-added tax on goods and services from 5 to 15%. Ooh, people are not going to love that. Strip a roughly 266 monthly allowance for state workers and review other financial benefits paid to employees and contractors. Yeah, that's going to go over like a lead balloon. We are facing a crisis the world has never seen in the likes of modern history, said Mr. Al-Jadaan. He said in a statement, the changes in taxes and benefits, he said, as tough as they are necessary and beneficial to maintain comprehensive financial and economic stability. While the austerity measures may not make a noticeable dent in the lives of the rich, they are likely to hit hard in the rest of the country. Yeah, so, man, it looks kind of crazy. You read the rest of the article, and they just talk about some of the ways they're losing money, and they know that the oil industry's time is limited, and they have to figure out something. And tourism is where it's going to be. There was another article I found interesting here. It says it's being built on our blood, and it's more of a liberal, bleeding heart view of some of the people that they are displacing in the area, because there are people who live in this area traditionally, and these are the people I was talking about earlier who know that this is indeed the mountain of God, and they're displacing a lot of people. They're moving people out, in the building sites that they want to build throughout, because this city is going to be gigantic, just gigantic, and a lot of people are being displaced. So in this article here, it talks about it's being built on our blood, the true cost of Saudi Arabia's $500 billion megacity. It says, with an artificial moon and flying taxis, NEOM has been billed as humanity's next chapter, but beneath the glitzy veneer lies a story of threats, forced eviction, and bloodshed. The future has a new home, proclaims the website. It's a virgin area that has a lot of beauty, says the voice of a string section of soundtrack. And everyone who comes back from here says that. It's just beautiful, even though it's a desert. Tracks color-tinted panoramic shots of picturesque desert expanses and deep azure lagoons. Better humans, better society, it boasts extravagantly. The brainchild of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's the new city-state of NEOM, named from a combination of the Greek word for new and the Arabic term for future, as the Greek versus the Arabic. Interesting. Or the Greek combined with the Arabic. I think that's interesting. Is intended to cover an area the size of Belgium at the far north of Saudi Arabia's Red Sea coastline. What was the one thing... Oh, yeah, this was it. There has been no shortage of outlandish promises for the $500 billion city-state, according to strategy documents leaked last year. The project may include a huge artificial moon, glow-in-the-dark beaches, flying drone-powered taxis, robotic butlers to clean the homes of residents, and a Jurassic Park-style attraction featuring animatronic lizards. In one of these articles, I don't know which one it was, they even talked about creating artificial rain, because they want it to be very lush and beautiful with plants. And to do that, there's no rain in this place. Again, it takes a lot of water to, provide for a city, especially if it's 33 times larger than New York City. I don't see how they're going to provide the water for that. And, without an act of God, which can happen at Mount Sinai for sure. But at the same time, it just seems, think about a city that large. People do laundry, they wash their cars, they water their lawns, They drink water. They provide water for fountains, provide water for, the restaurant industry, food and drink, all these things, cooking. So much water would be consumed, even flushing toilets. So much water would have to be, I just don't see it. I don't see how they can do this. Living on a homestead, it's made it very clear the importance of water to us. Water is so, so, so important. Anyway, I think this whole thing is fascinating. Just absolutely fascinating. And that all being said, what's going to happen here? I don't know. But I think it's an important thing to watch. And that's why I'm bringing it to your attention. That's why I'm doing a video on it, because it's fascinating to me. I think it might be fascinating to you. What do you think? Is this, first off, if you don't think this is the real Mount Sinai, you have not done your research. Go do your research. Read what the people who are coming back from there are bringing back and showing. Experts, Pamela Lorian, she is she really knows her stuff when it comes to ancient Hebrew inscriptions and alphabets and things like that. And she was with a team of people who went over there, who also are very well versed and taught in these things. And just the amount of evidence and pictures and things they brought back, just fascinating. Absolutely I would love to be able to go there. Now that they have lifted their restrictions, I would love to go over there. There supposedly is a travel agency in Idaho who has made relationships with the country of Saudi Arabia, and they are sending experts and people who want to go through them. I think it costs like $5,000 to get over there to Jabal al-Lawz, and that's not including your airfare. But I think the $5,000 covers everything. So it's expensive. I mean, it's really expensive to go. But I would love. I mean, if I had the Crown Prince's cash, I'd love to go over there and check that out and document some things, take pictures. I know David Coatney would as well. Maybe we'll get a chance to head over there and check out things. But yeah, just absolutely fascinating. If you're interested, do your own research on that. I really think this is Mount Sinai, but I don't think the Father will allow it to be used as a tourist trap. I think he's preparing it for his people. If this is the true Mount Sinai, and I believe it is, with all the evidence I've seen, I believe he's preparing it for his people. And he's using the wealth of another nation to do it. It's the same way it took place with Persia. Everyone says, the modern nation state of Israel is not authentic because it was propped up by the United States and Great Britain, which that's debatable hugely as well. But same thing, when Daniel, he prayed for God's people to come back to Israel. It didn't happen in his lifetime. But with Ezra and Nehemiah, it did. And the Father used the wealth and the army of Persia, a pagan, godless nation, to make that happen and to provide Nehemiah everything he needed to get the walls rebuilt and to defend itself against its enemies who were constantly trying to stop the progress that Nehemiah was trying to do in rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. So the Father has, there's like all kinds of... I don't know what is up with that. I hate when it does that. I gotta get a new video camera. I gotta get a new camera. This camera is about toast. The Father used the finances of a pagan nation to reestablish. He has a history of doing that, of using pagan nations to further his people and to bring about his people back to the land that he promised to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So I find it all fascinating. Hope you do too. All right, we'll leave it at that. Go home, read your Bible. Thanks.